拍身上的灰尘，振作疲惫的精神。远方也许尽是坎坷路，也许要孤孤单单走一程。早就习惯一个人，少人关心少人问，就算无人为我付青春，至少我还保有一分真。拍拍身上的灰尘。
Okay, so you get us started as however you want, and you take the lead on this. And I have my notes and everything here, and I'll chime in.
Well, I have been recording, and this is what episode is this?
This is episode 4, I think.
And the book is called I Am Jackie Chan. And just right off the top, what do you think of that title?
I think it suits this book because it is about his identity as a martial artist, movie star, Hong Kong cinema, and that's what it's about. It is Jackie Chan as a star, and it is a persona that he's presenting to his fans. This is for his fans. And I think, I Am Jackie Chan, he's sort of fully embracing that persona, because he's had multiple names and multiple identities, but he is finally Jackie Chan.
That's a very deep read into it. I thought I totally could see them just unable to think of a more inspired title, and just him just maybe bowling over his advisors. No, this is just, I'm Jackie Chan. That's it.
Yeah, as we read the story and you find out about his name, he was named after Hong Kong, and then he finds out that later in the book he finds out his father's name is different, and even the Chan is not really his identity, and names are really important in Asian and Chinese culture in particular, I think. And then he finds when he's making the movies early on, he takes his quote, older brother's name, he takes some other name, and then he just gets this name by accident in Australia when he's working as a laborer, and the guy says, his name's Jackie, because he figures nobody can pronounce Chinese names. So I think it's a lot about identity, and it's a lot about his identity as a kung fu, Hong Kong martial arts movie star.
I thought this book was a pretty good, it made me remember a lot of things I had heard and learned or just heard other people talk about when I lived in China, about what Chinese people are like and why they're like that. Mm-hmm. And yes, that's something that I had heard, again, just from someone else's anecdotal version, is how they're such an ancient country. We're so big on tradition. Your name, your word is everything. Your honor. But the time period he grew up in was in such chaos.
Yep.
And revolution that your what will win eventually is number one, survival, and then number two is make money, is get money,
right.
and beat your competitors no matter what. So, but once you're comfortably alive or comfortably successful, then you can claim you've always held family first, honor first,
right,
name
right.
and word. So it's a contradiction of when convenient you can lean on family, history, whatever, but then when
absolutely
push comes to shove, it's actually I'm this guy, or hey, I'm this guy. I'm what you just say whatever, say anything you want.
Yeah, it's this crazy mix of traditional values and stuff, the little aphorisms, very simplistic philosophy of life, that gets him through and present. I don't know if it even gets him through, but it presents him as a a saint. This squeaky clean image of Jackie Chan is hard to believe. And it's the myth. It's the myth of Jackie Chan, starting with chapter 1, by the way.
Yep.
The 12-month pregnancy.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's so like this book reads much like his movies, where they were just like a flash. You know, take the money and run. We got the success. Who cares about if we're building on any kind of past film or cinematic accomplishments? Just whatever. Like the audience, if they like it, it's good. That's it. Who cares?
Right. Right. And if they liked it that time, let's do it again. And so they'll like it again.
Yeah, so I totally could read. This book is obviously written by like a ghostwriter, I guess, or someone who just was hanging around him.
No, it's written by Jeff Yang. So I looked him up. If it's not listed on the computer, so I looked it up because it's in the copy.
Oh.
The hard copy that I got. So Jeff Yang is an American-Chinese journalist, businessman, business media consultant, and I think that's significant. And he's a ghostwriter for this obviously. But he writes for the Wall Street Journal, and he used to write a column called Asian Pop in the San Francisco Chronicle. So he is an expert on Asian, particularly Chinese culture, and Chinese culture is interpreted by Westerners. So he's written a book called Once Upon a Time in China. It's a guide to the cinemas of Hong Kong, Taiwan, and mainland China. So it's a really good meld with doing Jackie Chan. He also wrote I Am Jackie Chan, My Life in Action with Jackie Chan, says. He also wrote Eastern Standard Time. I think you might be interested in this one. A guide to Asian influence in American culture, from Astro Boy to Zen Buddhism. And finally, this one also should appeal to you, Secret Identities, the Asian American Superhero Anthology. And we have this new Marvel movie being released right now, the 10 Circles, or I forget what it's called, Shang-Chi, Legend of the Ten Rings. So I think this guy is going to probably chime in again, write another book.
Well, yeah, this guy sounds like a credible expert into the insights of cross culture, but I also sense in the book even if he attempted to kind of convince Jackie to be like, maybe you could, take a little deeper look at this, or what I could see him just being bold, just being pushed over. But no, this is what happened.
Yes,
because I said it.
Yes.
So put that in the book.
Yes.
So yeah. Even if he is a inspired writer, it just totally sounds like Jackie's like we'll get into it later, but all successes were because of him. If the movie was good, it's because he did it his way. If it didn't do well, it's someone else's fault.
Yeah, pretty much.
So the book is like that. How it's his chance to, as people do on the internet today, to address his critics. Mm-hmm. That what are you talking about? Look at the money. Look at how much we did.
That's right.
Look how long I've been doing it. I mean, what do you want? What else do you want? What else is there? And the writer could say, well, there's a lot more we could say. Why stuff is popular? Why this didn't work out in America? What was happening in America? Mm-hmm. Why did they like Bruce Lee so much? He's like, well, I don't care. It's like I feel like he would say.
It's sort of like that. Well, everybody's different sort of response to that kind of stuff. Yeah. But I think, because, and of course it's his story. The most deep he gets is, well, sometimes I wonder, that's as far as it goes. Sometimes I wonder when he's thinking about his, I don't remember exactly the specific instance, but even, the training, the training that he got at the so-called academy, he does admit it would be called child abuse today, but he doesn't look any deeper than, what was the purpose of this, and what did you learn from it? And this concept of, this master who tortured him, but he loves him is just really peculiar to me. But I think he's presenting himself to his fans. His fans are most important. And that's why he goes into detail on the movies. And that's who this book is for. It's his persona.
Yeah, but I think he is that. He does think it, too.
He might after all this time. But
I don't think he has a deeper, I'm just doing it for the fan. But really, I think a lot about how this affects children, or how I've been affected, or maybe I was like stunted as a kid. I think he totally linearly thinks like, yeah, well, it was horrible, but look, I'm super rich and famous.
Yep. He taught me those skills. Yeah.
So the cost, whatever it was, is worth it. I think that's just the simple, direct route that he takes.
Yes. And yet, in his movies, he's innovative. So that's kind of different, because he's not strictly traditional. He's innovative. He brought, a fresh face, comedic face to these kung fu movies. And he was in this transition period with the opera and even with the kung fu movies. So, but he's not introspective. That's absolutely for sure. Early on, he says, I'm not particularly curious. And that's absolutely true. So he's not necessarily a deep thinker. He's an entertainer, and I think that's the image that comes through.
Yeah. He's also, he's not, it's annoying. We can go outside the book for a second. His popularity has like plummeted, if you have seen anything, because he is pro-China, pro-Communist Party, and he's from Hong Kong.
Yes.
And just thinks the people there need to just settle down.
Yes.
And just accept what it is. And like he's the type where it's like, well, look, why don't you settle down? Or I don't know.
Well, he did. I mean, he did go along. Look at the situation that he was in that academy. What did he do? He went along and looks back on it and praises it. So yeah, I'm not surprised at all that he lauds the Communist Party and getting along and maintaining relationships are more important than anything else. Personal integrity or ambition, he can let those things squeak in, but I'm not surprised at all that he's, pro-China and pro-Communist Party. That makes sense to me. He's a victim, if you will. He's a product.
He's the extraordinary, like microscopic few who have like just by miracle, made it out unscathed or even, totally wealthy and successful.
Yeah. Yeah. But he's a product of the culture. And he's a product of the hierarchy and the traditional culture. And, he's very aware that I think he has to give obligations where they're due and that kind of thing. And he doesn't really badmouth too many people except that Lo Wei. But, I think he's a product of the culture and the changing times. And you want to go, you got to go along to get along sort of thing.
Yep. So jumping into the story, he says, his dad was a chef and his mom did something, and
greatest mother in the world. No, greatest mother in the world, the perfect mother.
Yeah, they worked for a diplomat from France, so he had a relatively privileged time in living in Hong Kong, up in the mountains, which is where the elevated people lived. And he's born in 1954. And right at the start, or near the start, it says his parents fled into Hong Kong from the mainland sometime before 1954, and that his parents were escaping the Japanese. And right there, I'm like, so if his parents, if let's say 1950, like the war is over, like the Japanese are not, like they've surrendered, I think, in 1945. So
yeah,
that I'm like, that does not seem right.
No, and that's not what I read. My notes say the parents fled China after the Communist Revolution. So, I think his parents fled to Hong Kong to get away from, the Communist Cultural Revolution, Mao Zedong, and all that stuff. So I think I don't know about the Japanese. Maybe you're conflating the Fist of Fury movie.
No, he wrote in my book. Maybe they updated it because that does not sound right. Because he wrote something to do with the Japanese. They were escaping. That's why they had to flee.
Oh wow!
And so maybe, but mine's the updated version. So you have the older version.
I read it. I read the internet version. And that's the notes that I have. His parents fled. the 12-month pregnancy. I have not gotten over that yet. But, after that, parents fled China after communist revolution. Are they refugees? Are they immigrants? Are they escapees? What are they exactly? And they luckily got this job with the French embassy. The guy could be a cook.
Yeah. You talk, because I'm going to find that thing.
Okay, you look for that, because my first problem with this book is this 12-month pregnancy. So, he also, and I'm sure it's part tongue-in-cheek, but he says part of the reason why it was a 12-month pregnancy is because of his stubbornness, which is a characteristic that he does portray. But, I did look up, what's the likelihood of a 12-month pregnancy? Well, you don't have a 12-month pregnancy. It doesn't exist. It's, they'd only go so far as to say it's highly unlikely, but it's much more likely that, this pregnancy occurred at an inconvenient start date, perhaps. And so, something went on there with the dates, or she didn't know, or she thought she was pregnant or earlier than she really was, or something's going on there. So that's the first thing. We've got myth building going on already. And so he's set to believe that he is an extraordinary person, which he is, but I don't believe the 12-month pregnancy idea.
Yeah, so I guess it's. I found the page.
Okay.
Actually, what's crazy on this photograph version of the book, you can search for words in the photograph, like it finds the words, and this is where he says, he talks about how he has 2 half brothers that his dad left behind and never talks about, and he confronts his dad and he says, you don't need to know about that. He says, yeah. Let's not talk about that. And he says, I don't know. The rest of the story isn't very clear. I know that it involved the Japanese. When the armies invaded China, they turned the nation upside down. Chinese fighting Chinese and Shanghai. My father's family had to abandon everything it owned and even more. My father's forced to leave. But that, even like when that invasion was happening, was like 1930s. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if his dad was like in his, I don't know, we don't know how old his dad was, but anyway, yeah, I guess it seemed like the turmoil of the invasion really screwed up everything. But I was looking for that. Like, yeah, but we exited into Hong Kong, which was Britain, because England owned Hong Kong. We escaped into the West, the Asian head office of Britain, because of the communists were coming. That was not put in there. So yeah, it is a misty version where he says like, yes. I know it's something to do with Japan, but really I'm like, yeah, well, it's definitely your parents got into Hong Kong because of the communists. So that was not said. So maybe that's what I remember.
Yeah, it's probably murky, and the fact that his father wouldn't talk about it or maybe mention certain things. Who knows how old these half brothers are? They could have been born in the 30s. It's not impossible. This is his second wife, Jackie Chan's mother, so it's not impossible that he could have fathered children 20 years apart. That's not impossible,
I guess.
But it's very, very murky.
Yeah.
Well, it's not impossible.
So
yeah. So he's got this, idealized version of his mother, and this regimented disciplinarian vision of his father. There's no closeness mentioned. What struck me is that this kid is just constantly being punished. I think he's got learning disabilities. I think he can't learn to read and write. I think he has never learned to read and write very well. And as most kids that have learning disabilities do when they're little, they act out. And so, as he says, he turned into a brawler. So he was punished at school and punished at home. Just, it seemed to me, constantly.
Yep. Could be.
I had that impression. And then they kind of lure him into this, quote, academy. And who knows what the father if the father was pawning him off because he was going to go to Australia, emigrate to Australia. But the process of having him visit the school a few times and loving it, because it was all active, it was all no book learning, nothing that was that kind of thing. He was treated like a prince. And then, lowering the boom on him was really, I couldn't understand the psychology of that completely. He was treated like a prince. He was allowed to misbehave with no punishment. And then suddenly, when he got a gift from home from his, beloved saintly mother, I mean, the guy is practically Irish, and he didn't share his treats with his, quote, brothers, then he gets in trouble big time. And I understand the philosophy of making all of the quote, students bond together, even if it's against the teacher, because it's the same kind of philosophy that they do in online teaching. Let the students bond with each other, even if it's against the teacher, because you want to create that bond. But still, the kind of torturous, the story of this academy is absolutely Dickensian in its horror.
I wrote that myself. Is this Dickensian?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, just awful.
Well, there's a popular word that's gaining traction today where I think that's called grooming, where you expose a kid to something, that's going to appeal to their childish desires, like candy or praise or just like warmth and stability, security, to lure them in so that you plant the seed that like, no, I'm doing this for your own good. Like, I'm your teacher. Your parents like me. They trust me. And then whatever horrible abuse I rain down on you later, it doesn't crack that first shell of that seed where you've been groomed into like still loving this person who's your abuser.
Yeah, this was just really perverted, this whole experience. I thought it was the whole structure of it, and the punishment, and which he calls discipline. I had to look this up because he says discipline. His father uses that word discipline, this ancient tradition of what a man is truly about. That this simple logical, what do they call those 3-step processes? Pain gives you discipline. Discipline is the root of manhood. So to be a man, one must suffer as much as possible. That kind of philosophy, that kind of simple step-by-step philosophy, especially in units of 3, is very, I think, perverted. It's used for a perverted end. And all for this, quote, master. Awful. Just awful. I could hardly read it. It's awful.
Yeah. Like, is that called a syllogism, maybe? The thing where if...
Syllogism. There you go. Logical syllogism. Yeah. This, then this, therefore, ba-ba-bum. Yeah.
Yeah, it's, simple thinking is required for these constructs of hierarchy to, like, continue, where... hierarchy and age is everything. Reward is constantly what keeps you in line. Like food, they're just like, you're just not fed. You're at the bottom of the totem pole, but your only upside is that eventually you'll be higher up the totem pole.
Right.
It's kind of funny. Like another thing that reminded me of China is where when I got there, they said, yeah, America or West is very like litigious and about punishing and judgment and like investigating what happened. So should you be punished, or is this good or wrong? But China is much more like transactional. Mm-hmm. Like if this costs me this, then you're going to have to pay. And if you're not going to pay, someone's going to pay. Like there's no the accounts are always settled. Like one thing he said is that when there's a car accident in China, and this is 10 years ago, and it's region by region because it's every place is like a Wild West. Depends on who are the bosses there. But like if you crash your car, you get out of your car and you negotiate with whose fault really was it. You should pay me this. Look at this damage. and you just argue it as you posture and try to extract whatever and defend what money you don't want to give. But if you actually call the police and they have to settle it, they judge on the street right there.
Mm-hmm.
And depending on who has more local favor or whose cousin knows who to influence the police, then that person will win. And then you have to pay the police for their time to settle to arbitrate or mediate the thing. So
interesting.
So that's what I thought, that this guy, Master Master Yun, he's their teacher, and he lost a lot when he was younger, and now he's taking it out on these kids, and that's just the cycle of losing face, gaining face. I've lost face with these people, I'm going to recover it from these ones. And
I think you're onto something there, especially with the transactional. Sometimes I don't have the vocabulary to define what's going on here. I just know that this is culturally very different from what I'm familiar with and prefer, of course, and I prefer it because I'm familiar with it. But yeah, I think, I remember when there was, when we were in Japan and there were certain, and I think the United States has this too on an insurance policy. If you lose a limb, you get this payment. If you lose a toe, you get that payment. And that kind of putting a monetary value on something like that, I found horrifying. But I think that's sort of the definition of a transactional culture. And the hierarchy. The hierarchy is paramount, absolutely. And your fate, your legacy and your hereditary determines your fate, and anything that comes your way is luck, just luck.
Yep. So yeah, and it's just he puts in as many anecdotes as he can. How he's a more heroic boy, and he stands up or accepts punishment from elders as much as he can. And I actually liked reading this book because it was like walking on a treadmill set to 1 and then believing you're exercising. So it's like, yeah, I am reading this book, and it's so slow and so repetitive and so stock with its language that I could just read it if I'm like half asleep or if I'm jogging through it and I missed something. I'm like, I don't really need to go back because I already probably know what it is, and I'm just going to keep going.
Yeah, I think you're right. Well, and it fits in with the repetitive types of Hong Kong cinema, the same movie over and over and over again. Because I did watch last night Fist of Fury with Bruce Lee. My God, that guy, he is just a wonder to watch in spite of the horrible direction and the face making and all of that stuff. Still, when it gets to the Kung Fu, it was fantastic. And, in that movie, the guy that plays the police chief, that's Lo Wei. That's the actor-producer that later betrays, in Jackie Chan's view, betrays him.
The guy with the fedora?
Yes.
Oh, really?
Yes, that's Lo Wei. Yes.
Oh,
yes,
wow.
Indeed.
Huh.
Yeah. So they made that movie, and I think that was with Golden Harvest, and Lo Wei was the director. Then Lo Wei leaves Golden Harvest because there's only a few, houses like studios in Hong Kong. And he has his own production company. And after Bruce Lee dies, then he tries to replace him with Jackie Chan in New Fist of Fury. But of course, that didn't work because they have entirely different styles. And then you said that there's another movie with Jet Li that's the same story, because they're historical dramas. And that is Shanghai when it was occupied by the Japanese, and the Japanese were the arch enemy.
That movie is called a Fist of Legend, and that one is like mind-blowing, the fighting. Jet Li is another maybe similar arc you could read into, because he also tried to break into Hollywood and had these minimal speaking roles. Like he was and in this book too, like they tried to get Jackie to be in movies, but you have to be the bad guy, and he's like, I'm not the bad guy. My fans only know me as the good guy. And Jet Li, he was in that movie Lethal Weapon 4, and he was like this bad.
Oh,
he was the bad guy.
Okay.
And he didn't speak much at all, and it was that was the 4th movie of a franchise, and
that it was starting to peter out.
Fist of Legend is about this school called Jingwu and the master. The same painting is used when they're defending the painting of the master from the Japanese Fist of Fury in 1972 or whatever. Mm-hmm. And the best student comes back, and the Jet Li one is he's so smart. He's away learning how like engines work and how the cars work. He's like done with kung fu. He's on to the next thing. But when he comes back,
okay, and
he, their teacher mysteriously loses in a duel and actually dies, and they're like, there's no way that he would lose to this guy. So they know he's poisoned, and actually that one is good because there actually is a karate expert who kind of gives some advice. Or there's like another fight scene with a karate master, and anyway, so that is obviously a remake of this Bruce Lee movie, but the Jet Li one is like unbelievable. But in the end, when of course the Japanese guy pulls out a samurai sword, which is like, oh, I thought we were fist fighting here. What are we doing?
Yes.
He whips his belt off and starts flinging it around like a nunchuck, like Bruce Lee does. But that's totally Jackie Chan style, where he just grabs something and uses it like whatever the traditional weapon is, and then kicks ass of the other guy. So I thought like, oh, that's, after reading this book, I realized, oh, that's this Fist of Legend is like the synthesis of, and also a better version of the Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan. Mm-hmm. He's like the next, the third generation.
Yeah, the third permutation. Because, these Kung Fu movies, these Hong Kong cinema and Kung Fu movies, it's a pretty small little genre there, right? That's it. It's based on the fighting, and the fighting is what's good. And otherwise, the only thing that's going on is the puzzled looks on the elders or the mooning look of the young romantic when he's thinking about getting married. So yeah, it's not a strong cinematic movement, but it's it's unique in its own way.
Yep. So he does his Chinese opera thing, and then eventually they realize no one cares about opera, so everyone leaves. The school shuts down. There was actually a kind of dramatic scene where his master, Yun... What also is funny is that the teacher, Yun, he has them all take his name. So his name is Yun.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yun Lo.
You think there's a bit of an ego thing there? Yun Lung, yeah.
Yeah, Yun Lung, Yun Biao. And there's a scene where Jackie leaves, and the cigarettes were like the most, I don't know, prized thing, and so the teacher's smoking, and then he's like, hey Jackie, you want a cigarette? And I don't know, it was like that was the one little exhale of like interesting writing in this like 400-page book, where the final goodbye from the teacher.
Because it's pretty bittersweet, and it's pretty, because by this time the teacher had actually adopted Jackie Chan, because then, his father went to Australia first, abandoning them, sending money home, I assume. It's a pretty usual traditional move for husbands and fathers to go away and work and send money home. That's not unusual at all. But then when the mother immigrates also to Australia, then Jackie's actually adopted by this, torturer, master of the academy, and so he's just sort of in his hands then. So that final farewell is the death of the opera, death of this relationship, which I don't think ever, was ever much of a relationship, but it's an opportunity for something a little bit deeper. But yeah, there's not much depth.
Yeah, so it's just funny. It's like the dad. There's lots of returns to a contract is everything. You sign your name. This is your word. And it's like, yeah, but like you're my dad. And so the contract is good unless you sign your contract to be my dad is done because you signed it off to like someone else assumed your contract. That's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. What about those unwritten contracts? Absolutely. Yeah. So Jackie goes on after this and joins the legion of stuntmen and tries to get into Hong Kong cinema. And I watched Fist of Fury with Bruce Lee very closely, and like 3 times, I think maybe I saw Jackie Chan as one of the students. And I don't know if he was Japanese or supposed to be Japanese or Chinese. I don't know, but I think there may have been some switching around going on. But I'm not sure whether I saw him or not.
Yeah, there's YouTubes that have him singled out of like where it's him getting hit, and there's a Reddit like legend where he says that, and it's true in the book, I guess, that Bruce Lee punched him like for real, like didn't pull his punch, and Bruce Lee like held him or something, and that Jackie pretended like he was more hurt than he was because he wanted Bruce Lee to hold him longer. But I thought that would be in this book, but I didn't see that, so it could be a blown up.
Not exactly.
Version.
No, maybe. Yeah, a part of the myth. He does give credit where credit is due to, I think, to Bruce Lee, and they have different styles. I think, Jackie Chan is a megastar. He's a global superstar now. He could say that, and he could say, there's some things he could beat me at, but some things I could beat him at, and that's fine. You want to maintain your precedence. This is your book after all, right? So I don't begrudge him that.
Well, I think that you can see even in Fist of Fury that like Bruce had an understanding that the camera is looking at your face, and you have to like convey what this character is going through just from a look or just from like what's happening. And that reminded me of how, yes, people understand TV or film and not just stage performing. It's not about your body and costume and makeup and huge gestures or huge action. It's like the viewer is right up in your face, like they're in the room with you. And so it seems like I'm not even that big of a Bruce Lee fan. Like I'm not into the lore or anything, but even in Fist of Fury, I was like, yeah, he gets it, I think.
He gets the movies.
Yeah, the camera's looking right here. And Jackie, the whole book, he's like, they don't care. I don't care about that. I want to do, the audience only cares about the most dangerous stunt that they know I almost died doing. That's what they want. That's what they go to see, a Jackie Chan film to see. And it's like, well, now, so yeah, you don't really have a different view of the difference between like this Chinese stage opera or movies, because people used to, shove their way into these opera houses to watch kids jump around, spinning plates, jumping on ropes, juggling stuff. But yeah, movies is a totally, you can do that, but also there's this whole acting dimension that he just like doesn't care about.
Well, it's not Jackie Chan. So here I want to say 2 things. I think, movies are often all about the close-up, and Bruce Lee got that, even though they're pretty heavy-handed with the whole facial. They're practically masks, the way they express them. It's almost like silent movies. It seemed to me watching that movie. But yeah, movies are different. They're a lot about the close-up. But the other thing is, I once saw Chuck Berry on a stage or, in a studio with the Rolling Stone guitarist. And the Rolling Stone guitarist started to give Chuck Berry a guitar playing tip. Chuck Berry. And so Chuck Berry was pretty patient with it, but he said, yeah, I could do that, but then it wouldn't be a Chuck Berry, right? So I think that's what Jackie Chan sees himself as. He makes Jackie Chan movies. And so the big, dangerous stunt, that's his signature, not about acting. He's not a good actor. But he does do these big, dangerous stunts.
But I even remember the scene in Fist of Fury. There's a reveal where one of the bad guys gets on a rickshaw, like to be pulled to go home, and then Bruce Lee raises his head because his head is covered with a hat, and you see it's him.
Right.
And that's what he like gets that this is a key moment.
Yes.
Where there's no words, and I was like, oh wow, that's hey, you got me.
Yep. Oh, really? Because I found his body language pretty outstanding and pretty identifiable. So like when he was the old man at the gate, and when he picked up the rickshaw, I recognize his body language. Bruce Lee is always kind of coiled to spring, don't you find? I mean, that's how I see him, and that's how I recognized him. Yeah.
So then there's a whole roller coaster ride of him being a stunt man. Then
Yes.
he climbs up being stunt coordinator. And I've got all these notes, but I just don't even remember.
Well, he's climbing the ladder. He's climbing the hierarchical ladder, as he has to do to try and, he made an impression. They see that he's good, but still, there's the hierarchy, and who's above him on the rung right above him is that older brother who teased him mercilessly in the academy, who he later calls Samo. I forget, Yun something, but so he has to climb the hierarchy, and he doesn't have any kind of personal artistic freedom until later.
Yep. I just thought of something, like he fails like 2 or 3 times and goes to Australia. And it was just another moment of like the writer should be like, I guess, this did happen, but what does it have to, like, I don't know. He goes home, then he gets a phone call, comes back, then he gives up again, goes to Australia, then he gets another phone call, comes back. So like then he runs into his old girlfriend who gives him like $20,000 for some reason. Like is this for real? Like it's just odd.
It is odd, but again, the Hong Kong cinema was in transition, and Bruce Lee had died, and they couldn't recreate those movies every 6 weeks because they didn't have somebody of his caliber. And in spite of Lo Wei trying to recreate Bruce Lee movies with Jackie Chan, it wouldn't work. It couldn't work.
Yeah.
And so the industry was kind of dying, and that's why he returned to Australia those couple of times. And I think he tells the Australia story because that's where he got his name, Jackie Chan. That's where the Jackie comes from.
Oh,
right?
okay.
When he's
that's true.
working as a laborer. Yeah, so he has to include that.
So okay, now I think I got it. So then he meets his business manager called Willie, and he helps him broker being signed to not Golden Harvest, but to Lo Wei, who quit Golden Harvest antagonistically or with tenuously, but Lo Wei has a name,
right,
and signs this long contract, like 10 years.
Yeah.
And then finally, Lo Wei, the director's iron-fisted, and I know what's going on. And then Jackie gets lent out of his contract to another studio called Seasonal, where he makes Drunken Master, which was like a hit. And
yes,
that's when he realizes like the director for Drunken Master was like young and just let him do what he wanted. And so that's where Jackie realizes, like, I know what I'm doing.
Right. That's like his breakthrough performance. Yeah.
Yeah, which I've never seen that.
I haven't either, but it's on that Tubi that I mentioned to you. I think it's available on Tubi TV.
It must be like, comedic, that it must be kung fu with like, whatever. But so then he realizes, I got to get away from this guy. I got to do it my own way. And then the guy, Lo Wei, gets him to sign a contract that's just blank. It says like,
yes,
you don't worry about it, I'll take care of you. But so now that release clause to work elsewhere is like $10 million. It's like a huge amount of money. And then they're screwed. And then luckily, Lo Wei's lawyer, who Jackie helped with something somewhere, says, hey, I have a memo that Lo Wei intentionally did that to screw you, so we can screw him back, and then he gets out of it or something.
Right. He does, with the help of Willie also, who becomes his new, lifelong friend and trusted, eventually, agent. Yeah, but he couldn't have done it without Willie, I think. And they took advantage of his, naivete, his youth, and also the fact that it's not a litigious culture. And, even if he had had a written contract in front of him, he probably wouldn't have read it. He may not have been able to read it, and he probably wouldn't have read it anyway, because he was just looking for an opportunity. Yeah. So that was a big turning point in his life. As I look at the turning points in his life. The big one is being put in the academy. It's not so much his parents moving away, but being put in that academy, this new environment that he has to get into and become a part of. And the other big turning point is this betrayal, in his words, by Lo Wei, that he would do that. I can't believe he would do that to me. Why would he do that to me? Because Jackie says always he was obedient, did anything they wanted. He would sweep the floors. He did everything. So that was a huge turning point for him.
And he even has sympathy for him because he realizes that Lo Wei is tied to the mafia. That once Bruce Lee's gone, Jackie Chan's gone, he's going to be totally ripped up by the Chinese triads or whatever. Yeah.
And also by this time, I think he was pretty old. He's kind of an old man now, and his glory days were over.
Yep. So then I don't even. It's all these movies are thrown around in a. Then I made this movie. It did okay. Then I did this movie. I could have done it better. Then I did this one, and it's like I mean, yeah, that's typical. You kind of downplay your failures or your kind of mediocrities, but there's just so many movies he talks about casually as he progresses.
So he's made over 150 movies, because as he says, in Hong Kong they would turn out a movie every 6 weeks, just all the time. But during this period, when he's making movies kind of that he wants, that he's learning the craft of making a movie, they're all based on that kind of drunken master formula. So he plays a young, naive boy or young man, and then he gets this crazy master who teaches him some esoteric martial art, and so he repeats that kind of formula, just a little bit different, laughing hyena or a drunken master, drunken monkey or something like that, over and over and over again, until that's kind of played out. But what happens in the meantime is he goes to the United States. And This also was a huge turning point for him. And there's some big fat sour grapes going on in this one, I think.
Yeah, this is where the book got kind of, okay, I'm starting to not... As he gets older, I'm like, I'm kind of saying to the writer, like, couldn't you, like, this is making him look kind of bad.
Yeah.
This is not just like airing out all your grievances to everyone who didn't listen to how great... It started being like this sounds like Trump's autobiography or something. Like, I was right. I knew more than everybody. He starts complaining like, gonna get to America. They had to shoot a scene in 5 days. I'm like, I need at least 20 days. And they're like, are you out of your mind? Like, we don't just, costs are real here. This isn't just like shoot somewhere in a random super cheap place for Hong Kong dollars with that. You realize that the staff that he had in Hong Kong, he was paying like pennies as he was paid pennies. But when you have, unions and benefits and insurance and liabilities and costs and taxes and and not being funded by dark money by the mafia, it's like, yeah, this stuff costs money, and you don't just get unlimited funds for whatever you feel like improvised fighting you want to maybe do that day.
Yeah.
And he doesn't realize that even at 45 when he writes this book. He's like, these directors, they don't realize the Jackie Chan style is I do whatever I want for however long I want. And that's what makes a great movie. And you're like, wow.
Well, that's what makes a great Jackie Chan movie. But what's interesting to me is that, he's in this movie, Cannonball Run. This was a vehicle for Burt Reynolds, and it was also star-studded. It was like it's a mad world. It was all these stars in this huge race movie. But it was primarily a vehicle for Burt Reynolds, who was a superstar at the time. And he said in the United States it was marketed as a Burt Reynolds movie, but in Hong Kong it was marketed as a Jackie Chan movie. But it was a Burt Reynolds movie. Let's get clear about that. And that's also where he picked up the idea of putting the outtakes in the credits, because Burt Reynolds, he did that. I think he pioneered that, and that was famous in all the Burt Reynolds movie. They were loaded with action, because Burt Reynolds was another stuntman turned actor, and he put the outtakes in the credits, and they're just hysterical because everybody's laughing all the time.
Yeah.
But what struck me about this whole American thing is he has this abrupt attitude change when he's dealing with the press and going on the morning show, and he equates it to being asked to perform like a dog and, you know, break some boards with karate. And he's highly offended and takes great umbrage with this disregard of the fact that he's a superstar in Asia, and says things like, I don't care about America. America's a small market. Asia is a big market. And, you know, why are you having me perform this way? And yet he's in America. I mean, he went there for a reason. You know, he didn't come here to, you know, be a missionary. He's here to try and make big bucks. And the big problem with him is the frustration of not being able to speak English. And so he doesn't understand the questions, even though he did prepare the night before with Willie over the phone. What are they going to ask me? So I have answers prepared. His English is very, very poor. And he's frustrated by that, and frustrated by the cultural difference in being peppered with questions and not having, maybe they got more respect if there was any press in Hong Kong, but he sure didn't get it here. So he gets this big attitude change where he just take it or leave it. This is what I'm going to be. I'm the biggest star in Asia. If you want to talk to me, come to me. It's very uncharacteristic. It's very uncharacteristic for his persona that he presents. Always smiling, always joking, nice guy. It was very odd, I thought.
Well, that's what's crazy is that, yeah, I would be fine with it if this was a collection of his writings after that, at that time. But this book is like, it's 20 years later, and he's telling his ghostwriter, like, yeah, this is totally what happened. They screwed up.
Yeah.
They were trying to screw me up. And I'm like, you know, I don't care about like, you can't like reflect on this
I'm
more.
not going to stand for that.
Maybe you were like underprepared, or your handlers totally did not prep you enough, or you just got thrown in there. Like that would be a more like sophisticated like takeaway on it. Like you were not prepared at all to just penetrate this market.
Yes.
But he's like, no, I don't think
not
so.
to mention more truthful. Not to mention more truthful, because I think that's what happened. It's not, it doesn't fit. I think he was just sort of artificially trying to display this strength, you know, the biggest superstar in Asia, and Asia's a huge market. Okay, then, you know, go peddle your movies in Asia. That's fine.
It's so funny too, because he has direct experience with that, where in Hong Kong he was asked to be the next Bruce Lee, and even he should draw on his own memories. Like, okay, when I go to America, they're probably gonna be like, "Oh, you're the next Bruce Lee," and he's like, "What the hell? I'm not that. I told you."
Yeah.
Oh wait, this is a different country in a different language. Like, how does he not?
I know.
Connect that at the time, and then also 20 years later for his own book. Like,
Yes.
I should have probably realized that, like, they would think I'm Bruce Lee or whatever.
Yeah. Again, as deep as he goes is just, well, sometimes I wonder. You know, it's like in America at that time. I mean, my father, when Tadashi first met him, he said things like, my father would say, I'm going to give you a judo chop. And Tadashi would just laugh, you know, because there's no chopping in judo.
Yeah.
Okay. You know? So it's just that American clumping of everything all together, and not, you know, you're going to show us some karate, you're going to show a biggest board, you know. Well, it's a media tour.
The other guy who died recently was Sonny Chiba, who was he had made a movie called The Street Fighter, I think, and he was a Japanese like karate star who would have fight scenes, and like Quentin Tarantino was a huge fan of him and would get him to be in the movies. So that could be why they thought he was like another karate guy.
Well, they just clump everything together. They don't know anything.
Yeah.
So we better move along here. Anyway, he comes back from the United States and he calls himself an angry young man. And then he has this entourage, his boys around him all the time. And he is, pretty despicable in his behavior. He has this girlfriend, quote, Teresa, who he neglects, and take it or leave it, the same way he was sort of treating America. So he's pretty immature. I think part of the problem with the hierarchical kind of culture is the maturity is kind of delayed, because if there's no rules to follow, and he didn't have any rules to follow, he doesn't know what to do. And he never developed, the self-esteem to formulate his own code.
Yep, he's totally a diva, and he's buying stuff. He's rich.
Yep.
He's running into Taiwanese actors, actresses, and he has a glamorous girlfriend who they say, don't, if it'll make you look bad if you break up with her, or if you look like an asshole to her. It's not good for your career. And he does he does write about that, like, I should have not done that. I should have
he does, the maturity now. Well, gosh, he should be mature now. 1998.
I wrote down he's 28 in this part where he is that girl dumps him, and he also makes a movie that takes a year to make, and has a sweetheart deal with Golden Harvest to just have unlimited money and unlimited locations. And that movie just is a disaster. Like, he's shooting places with his entire team following him, and they waste time and waste tons of resources.
He's floundering. Absolutely floundering. His perception of women is, all the two girlfriends that he has, or the three, I suppose, the one that he married one, is pretty chauvinistic, let's say. They're demure, they're sweet, they accept him as he is. They order the same thing he does, even if they don't know what it is, because he couldn't read the menu. He just orders something. So he's got a pretty, old, antiquated, chauvinistic view of women. Interestingly, because Michelle Yeoh was interviewed for this new movie that's coming out, the Marvel movie, because she's in it. And so they talked to her about Jackie Chan, and they said, doesn't Jackie Chan think most women belong in the kitchen? And she said, yes, until I kicked his butt. So she has
They asked him that?
They asked her that. They asked Michelle Yeoh that. And
Wow.
She said, yeah, he did. But until I kicked his butt, but she's a great martial artist. She kept up with all the martial artists. And so it's interesting that they mentioned him to her being in this movie and being current.
Yeah, that sounds like a total
Finally,
a clickbait thing, because Jackie Chan is not doing well online for his political positions.
No, and his movies. I tried to watch the 2020 movie Vanguard. It's just dreadful. It's just awful. I didn't even finish it. He can't. He has these young men playing his roles, so that if they hit something, then they shake their hand in pain. When he first did that, I think I saw the first movie that he was ever in when I was living in Japan. It was a breath of fresh air, because Bruce Lee showed no pain during any of the fights and barely got a scratch. But Jackie Chan, he made it comedic, because when he hit someone, ooh, my hand, it's obvious that it was hurting. And so that was a breath of fresh air. But you can't keep playing that. You can't keep beating that same drum over and over again, just with younger players. It doesn't work.
Yeah, that's where it seems he was just failed by the educational system. He just found this one thing that worked, and it's like, well, it's been working, so this is it. But yeah, of course, you have Marvel fight scenes where they're totally just in a green screen studio. They're all wearing green suits, and they're just it's just mind blowing, all their superpowers and stuff they can do.
Right.
That there's no way his style can even compete.
No,
today.
But he did do these death-defying stunts. That's absolutely, for sure. That is his claim to fame. Absolutely. Bringing that breath of fresh air, the comedic influence, and also doing these dangerous death-defying stunts and getting hurt in the process very often.
Yep. He said, here's a quote from the book. He said, "I'm not saying it's wrong to take precautions, especially when actors' lives are at stake. But in Hong Kong, we trust our training to protect us, even where a padded mattress won't. No one's ever gotten killed on one of my movies. There are always injuries, but never anything that's ended a life or a career. So we trust our training, and just luckily, I've never had anyone die." Like that's a
big success story.
Like he doesn't give. It's almost like that's the funny thing. Like he thinks it's all him that had this success, but really the circumstances of the environment where there's no health and safety, there's no like liability. Like if someone gets hurt, that's then their problem, which is kind of even China today. There's no social security, there's no real social health care. You're just you're on your own 50 years later. And low prices for everything, unlimited funding through dark money, through the mafia, and just because he had some success, he was given ultimate freedom. But in a hyper competitive market where there's federal laws against hourly wages, overtime, union benefits, liability insurance, like all these things, you're not. If you can make a hit under these circumstances, then that's kind of more significant than just having some box office hit with just no restraints or constraints on you.
Well, anybody can do a death-defying stunt if they don't mind defying death. But if there are parameters or guardrails that you can't put people's lives at risk, then you're right. It's not such an easy task.
Yeah, it'd be like if you were like a slave owner in the South like 200 years ago. Look how rich I am. I'm freaking rich. Mm-hmm. It's like, but you can own people, but I am the one who is rich, so you have to give me that. Like, well, no, I don't. Not really. I don't know.
Yeah.
Again, as he compares, because he does complain about Hollywood later too.
Well, but he was. I will give him that he is innovative and that he saw if everybody's doing one thing, I wanted to do something different to stand out from the crowd, and I think that takes tremendous courage. And the trouble is that people hang on for longer than they should sometimes. So he should go behind the scenes and be a producer or teacher or something like that, and not try to necessarily perform, because it's the curse of growing old and being injured that you can't perform the way young healthy people can.
Yeah, this is where people are mad at Quentin Tarantino because he says he has one movie left he's going to make and then retire because they're like, what are you talking about? You're still young. You've only gotten better and better. But he knows that movie makers, they just eventually they go down.
Yeah, there's a shelf life. Yeah. You're at your peak. You have to. It's a very difficult and sort of counterintuitive situation because everybody peaks at different times, but they're all probably, within certain parameters that you're not going to produce your best work after 60, probably. But it's difficult to face that as you get older. I'll tell you, it's very difficult to face that. And also to stay in the same, quote, industry that you've been in, even, because then you see up and comers and you see your powers lessening. It's very difficult.
Yep. So
I think that I want to talk a little bit about 1998, or did you have something you wanted to point out?
What's 1998?
1998 is when this autobiography was published, and that was the year that he was shooting Rush Hour.
Oh, right.
Which made him a global superstar. Really, that movie belongs to Chris Tucker, but he was very good. It made him a global superstar, and things that he longed for, he got the big gala opening, and he also got to put his handprints in Mann's Chinese Theater. He also got to meet superstars like he calls Sylvester Stallone his good friend, and he got to meet these other people at the Academy Awards, and that's good. That gives him a certain amount of cachet. But again, it's this difficult relationship with America. I think primarily, his English skills hold him back, and his idea of who he is and how he's not going to take over America. He has to fit in, and that's a difficult thing.
Yeah, he's he's just set in his ways and struggled. He's just praised everywhere he goes.
Well, yeah, I think he was look at this face. He's so cute. He was really cute and always smiling and always fun. The back of the book has all these different faces of his making expressions, most of them, kind of surprise. So he was a breakthrough artist in his day, but it's very difficult to sit on your laurels and not do anything. So that's a difficulty. I loved his movies that I saw. I thought they were really cute, but I think he's past his sort of, I don't like to be so callous, but it's sort of like he's past his sell-by date.
Yeah, I think it comes down to the issue is that he succeeded for an extraordinarily long time using a rigid method that just and then it also is annoying that as he looks back on it, he still complains at how it wasn't his rigidity, it was that something else, a director's fault or a market's fault or something where a more, I don't know, interesting person is someone who succeeds or fails, but evolves with the changing demand or with the you have to evolve against evolution too, and that's just super hard or just impossibly difficult, I guess. But yeah, I remember he made that movie Rumble in the Bronx. That was a pretty cool movie. I remember his movie Jackie Chan First Strike was mind-blowing, where they travel around and they do snowboarding stunts, and then in an aquarium he fights people, and then using this ladder, there's a huge ladder scene where he's fighting people with a ladder.
I've seen that. Yeah.
That was where I was like, whoa, this is crazy. And that was actually the fourth movie of his franchise called Police Story. So in Hong Kong it's called Police Story First Strike, but over here it's called Jackie Chan's First Strike.
Oh, I see. So Police Story, that's where Michelle Yeoh was in his movies.
Yeah. That's
where, whatever version, I don't know which version.
And so then he made Rush Hour, and yeah, I honestly don't remember any stunts in Rush Hour. I just remember Chris Tucker being kind of racist towards him, which was
yes,
charmingly
not just Chris Tucker.
Time.
Yes,
yeah, everyone.
Yes,
yeah, everyone being
everyone was. Yeah, they were the new allowed racist victims. Yeah, nobody could say anything, but they all were racist toward this Asian. Yeah, that was very pronounced. And I noticed it at the time. But still, it was Chris Tucker's movie. He was just so funny and outstanding.
Yeah, well, all he was though is he's kind of just a carbon copy of Eddie Murphy from Beverly Hills Cop. This just fast talking kind of a mystifying speaker to suit it up white cops. And so
yeah,
it was I remember. Yeah, it was a good one. There was a big stunt at the end where he just falls from a ceiling, and Chris Tucker has to catch him.
These big banners were coming down. I think he slid down the banners. Yeah.
But of course, there's no way he was just allowed to fall that far. There was a million safety things. I absolutely positive that were there, because if it was an American production, they wouldn't have let him done that. But of course, he doesn't mention that. He just talks about how he's a mega superstar.
Yeah, it was in the process. He was in the process of filming that, so he didn't know if it was going to be a hit or not. He said in the book.
But he says he grinds away at how like they need real danger to know it's a movie, and I'm like, well, this one is your biggest hit of all time, and I'm sure that all this danger you evangelize was not there in that movie.
Oh, you're right. I see what you mean. And he does go on the internet version and talk about that post Rush Hour. It was a game changer for him. It really was, and I think he does acknowledge that. But yeah, you're right.
Yeah, then he makes
because he's got this simple philosophy, and it's more complicated than that.
Yeah, that's the convenient thing. It's like, oh, honor is honor, family is family. But hey, if I'm making money over here, let's not. That all gets swept. That can get superseded by look at the income, look at the money that's rolling in.
Right. Right.
He makes that Shanghai Noon, and that has a sequel with what's his name?
Owen
guy.
Wilson.
Yeah, Owen Wilson. Who was like a mid 2000s America's sweetheart or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they liked him. He was popular. He still is, because he's in that new series called Loki on Disney Plus about the Marvel universe. Yeah, he's in that, and he has his charms. He's always the same, but he has his charms. But you know what? A lot of movie stars are always the same, and Jackie Chan and Owen Wilson, they are not great actors. That's for sure.
Yep. So then now we get to the epilogue, post-log, or whatever is pretty cringy. How he has to. Here's some loose ends I forgot to address. That older brother, Sammo Yun Lung I had, he definitely copied and stole 2 of my ideas, FYI.
Yeah. Yep.
What else does he say? Yeah, maybe. Yeah, it's just a mix, like a melting pot of different little things he wants to say.
Right. It's just they're just PSs. They're postscripts. So it's after Rush Hour success, 2 things impressed him: that he was able to meet fellow superstars.
Oh yeah,
he calls them, even though he can't speak to them. He was great meeting in the green room after the Academy Awards, and also the fact that Spielberg was interested in him.
Yeah, he likes. Yep.
So I don't think they ever made a movie together, did they? But he's still starstruck by Hollywood, even though he can disparage Hollywood and say they don't do it right and all that stuff. He's still starstruck. So, that innocence continues.
So now here's the real awkward stuff, is that other news of Jackie Chan is that he has a son named J.C. Chan.
Yes.
With his wife from Taiwan, who's an actress. And there's even a little ending of a chapter that says, sure, I travel like 75% of the time. I rarely make it home to Hong Kong, but I am still married.
Yeah.
And I have a wife, and I have a wife.
Yeah.
So American people, they usually get married for like 1 year and then divorce. So
yeah,
try to talk to me now. And you're like, what the?
Yeah, and I've been married, quote, I've been married for 15 years. We're still together, except that they're not together.
Yeah, I know.
They have entirely separate lives.
It's so crazy. Like, it's a very confrontational sentence at the end of it. I'm like, well, geez. But actually, he actually has a daughter from an affair he had in 1999 named Ing, or NG.
Yeah, Ing.
And so his response to that, now this could be out of context or out of a whole, who knows how long of a statement he made, because, who knows, but the quote says that I only committed a fault that many men commit. So, which kind of runs parallel with his whole book, like, hey, like, it's not just me, or it wasn't my fault, or it's, come on.
Yeah. Well, I think, again, that's why this is such an image projection, because it's so squeaky clean. Those innocent little, go and look at the moonlight with that first girlfriend and, hold hands. That was it. It's too good to be true.
Yeah, it's like a Aladdin story.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, for further embarrassment, he disowned his daughter when she came out as a lesbian when she was 17 years old. So now, disowned, like, who knows what that means. The Chinese version could mean, like, shun, like, never speak of again and cut all contact.
Oh.
In 2009, he was named the anti-drug ambassador by the Chinese Communist Party. 5 years later, his son, JC, was caught with 3 ounces of marijuana and was held in jail for 148 days. He did not do anything to help massage his son's sentence or get out of there.
No.
They both had to make public, shameful apologies. And some say he still talks to him. Another site says they are estranged. And that the son moved to Los Angeles, which means he got out, which is good for his survival.
Yeah, not only got out, but got the hell out. So yeah, and I've read the same, that he's estranged, and also that his fortune, he's going to give half his fortune. Jackie Chan is going to give half of his fortune to charity, and his son can earn his own money.
Yeah, that's so funny too. It's like, yeah, okay, way to punctuate a good thing with like a shitty thing. Like, I'm a good guy. FYI, I'm a good guy. I'm gonna give my money away, and here's a middle finger to you that it's not gonna go to this guy. And it's like, well, we could have maybe deduced that, but thank you for clarifying that, I guess.
Yeah, pretty obvious. Actions speak louder than words. That's for sure. He had a bit of a consequential life, but again, he's a big fish in a little pond. These kung fu movies, they're not, especially now with CGI. They're just not in demand, I don't think. Although, I mean, the Avengers have sort of taken the place of all those kung fu movies. Are there more? Is it still a cult favorite?
Yeah, I'm a pretty huge Marvel fan, and I know all these. I knew all the Avengers characters and all that stuff. This new Chinese character I've never heard of in my life. Like,
yeah, everybody connected to Marvel says that. I've read that a couple of places. Yeah,
there was a kung fu character on G.I. Joe, and G.I. Joe is, of course, military guys running around shooting guns with their own special personas. There's sunglass guy. There's like shot whatever. It's about guns. Then there was a kung fu guy who he would get his own episodes, and I knew him more than this Shang-Chi character I've never heard of in my life.
Oh.
So that looks like total stock, cliche, boy of destiny, learns his heritage, has kung fu powers that is totally created to, to serve the Chinese audience. But I think it's going to be just a lame movie.
We shall see. Interestingly, I don't know a lot about Chinese culture. You know more than I do. But I watched fairly recently the Disney animation about the dragon. It was I forget what it was. I forget the title of it, but when I'm watching this movie, this cartoon, it seemed to me that what it was really about was about China taking back Hong Kong and taking back Taiwan, because there were these dragons living on islands, and they had to come back into the fold, as it were. So I think that's part of the propaganda machine. Look on Disney Channel and see if that's there. If you think that's what that's about. It certainly seemed that's what it was about to me. It was pretty obvious that, you have to come back to the fold. You have to come back. We have to be united. And the fact that these dragons were living on islands like Taiwan and Hong Kong seemed to me a hope for the future that China was trying to put forth.
Yeah, it's weird how, because in the old days, you everybody went nuts to get the Chinese market, get these customers, get the children familiar with Disney products and McDonald's and stuff like that. That then you'll have a ingrained customer base for generations.
Right. Right.
But like, so clothes, you can go over there and, this is 10 years ago, but there'd be counterfeit clothes, counterfeit brands, everything. They would manufacture the real stuff there and ship it out, but then keep the factories working for another 12 hours just to keep the same designs, but the fake versions, which is, of course, what everybody buys because it's the same look, but costs like 1/10 the price. And so even like movies, too, it's like, well, we'll make a movie with a Chinese character and maybe we'll snag some income, but, bootleg movies or free movies on the internet is such a easy thing that I wonder if now the law or distribution has beefed up that now they're willing to invest in a fully Chinese movie that they can get enough money back or something. Like if movie theaters can generate legitimate income that it comes back. I don't know.
Well, I see it more, rather than dollars and cents, I see it more as influence and propaganda. And that, I think, is a little bit more frightening prospect, that the country is cash rich. And so I've seen this documented in other news stories. They'll, build a port for like Sri Lanka, and then eventually Sri Lanka gets the port, but guess what? China has the control. And so I think that I see movies being sponsored by Chinese, money, producers, I suppose. And I just wonder about the influence that's being peddled more than the dollars and cents, I think. Maybe ultimately dollars and cents, especially in the case of a port. But for a movie, I think it's influence.
So I like Jackie Chan mainly for that First Strike movie, but now I kind of don't like him because he's feet of clay. It's like I love Thomas Jefferson until I went to Monticello, and then you pointed out, he enslaved his own children. I thought, wait a minute, maybe this needs a better look, and this whole celebrity adoration thing is not a good idea. They're all human. They all have feet of clay, and our heroes are not. They project this squeaky clean image, especially when they write their own book with no author on the title, but I in the title. No author on the front, but I in the title. It looks like he wrote it. And the image is just a little bit too squeaky clean. But guess what? They're human. He hasn't done anything any man hasn't done. But I think just even though he's had so much exposure to other, he has so much access, but he's still so unchanged as someone who just spent their entire life in one neighborhood of Hong Kong or something. Like
well, the neighborhoods up here is the culture. Cultural influence goes deep, 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 deep. And do you think that he has a responsibility to be more knowledgeable? He's an international star. Should he have a more international mindset, or do you think he has a responsibility there, or what?
I'm surprised that just nothing kind of got through. Like nothing penetrated. Like he even says in one quote, he's like, well, American movies, I guess American people, they like to talk. That's why their movies have so much talking. Like that's, you mean as opposed to that? I mean, inversely, you think, well, Asian audiences like punching and kicking. Yeah. That's why my movies do so well, and that's why I put punching and kicking. Like that's the depth of your read on like why people like anything. It's just people like these people like this. These people do this, so they like this. My people do this, so I do this, and that's why I'm famous. You're like you told your writer to put that in the book.
Yeah, you would expect a little more growth, a little more introspection, especially as you said, he's been exposed to so much. But I think he's always insulated himself, probably because he's always protected his image, and he lives for the image alone. Maybe it's interesting.
there's a Netflix show called BoJack Horseman, which is actually
Yes.
reminded me of this, where he was famous in LA, and then a writer, to help his career, they want to write a book about him. So this writer is supposed to help him, and he gets angry when how bad he looks and tells her to, don't make me look so bad.
Change it.
Yeah, so it's kind of like that.
Well, I think that the reality has to be acknowledged. And so, in spite of Jackie Chan's best efforts to make himself look good, the truth comes through that he's not as squeaky clean or as perfect or as simple or self-effacing as he claims to be. So, we're educated readers, so we can see some of the truth anyway. But it was still interesting, and I still enjoy a lot of his movies.
Yeah. Another thing that rubbed me the wrong way right at the start is where he says, like, I think the past should stay in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to know whatever happened.
Mm-hmm.
As I said, it's in the past. It's like, okay, well, ignorance is a convenient
Yep.
place to be. So
That's right.
I don't need to know more about you. Like, oh, it's just like it's amazing.
Well, and nobody does anything alone. And we're reading this biography about him alone. And it's as if he, created everything and did everything, but nobody does anything alone. It takes multitude work hours to do anything. So we're just facing that reality that he's, not the end all and be all, and he has some flaws and feet of clay. But, part of being a mature adult is recognizing that. And, sometimes you take the good with the bad, and the bad is not, impossible to take. I'm sort of gotten into a verbal trap here, and I don't know how to get out.
Yep. So that's it. What is the next one?
The next one, I have two suggestions, and I don't know if either of these are available online for you. And one is Straight Man by Richard Russo. I haven't read either one of these, but I know you've read Richard Russo before, that Venice one. This is about college college faculty life, I think, and it's supposed to be funny. And it's about 400 pages long. And Shuggie Bain, which is like Tis by the Irish writer, but Julie said it's Scotland. And this is thicker, but I think the paper's thicker. This is about 430 pages long. So either one of these, this is a novel, and these are both novels. They're not biographies and they're not nonfiction. They're both fiction. And I don't know which is available. You can look and see if you don't want to order it, and we can make a decision, in a couple of days.
Yeah, I have read Richard Russo. He wrote, I think, Empire Falls, which turned into a HBO 2-part.
Oh, did it? I didn't know that.
Just a 2-part series. But yeah, that was a really, like, I felt like I was there in the little town. Maybe that other one that I know.
You don't want to read the. Okay.
Shuggie.
I don't know anything
Bain.
about this either. But I think it's about a poor boy and his single mother, and it's Scotland. Did you read that? I forget the guy's name, but he wrote a biography of his life in Ireland. It was called Tis, and it was huge, 80s or 90s. And so Julie said this is like Tis, but it is Scotland.
I don't know. Nope, I don't know anything about that.
So you want to read this?
Yep. Shuggie.
Okay. Well, Shuggie Bain, and the author's name is Douglas Stewart. A regal Scottish name.
Well, that's going to do it for this episode of, what is this? Books. Reading books.
Reading books.
Reading books. So
Reading books.
This is we have to trim this one down, but we will catch you next time. This is Joe and Mariana signing off.
Bye bye.
就算无人为我付青春，至少我还保有一分真。拍拍身上的灰尘，振作疲惫的精神。远方也许尽是坎坷路，也许要孤孤单单走一程。莫笑我是多情处，莫以成败论英雄。人的遭遇本不同，但有豪情壮志在我胸。